On this channel, I've redrafted every NBA draft from 2010 until 2019, and I really like doing redrafts. It fascinates me to look back and see how the order of the actual draft is so different than the redraft and how difficult it is to evaluate talent at such a young point in players' careers. And today I'm going to go back and I plan on doing on this channel a lot of all-time redrafts, like some of the drafts in the 90s, the early 2000s, but today I'm going to do the 2009 redraft. This is the draft class with Steph Curry and James Harden, as you can see, and this is definitely an interesting draft with a lot of talent at the top of the redraft and had a lot of interesting decisions, and it's a hot topic right now with the Warriors winning the championship too. So this is the redraft we're going to do today, and usually I do the whole lottery, but today we're just going to do the top 10 and look at some of the biggest busts in this one as well. So let's get into it. With the first pick in the redraft, the Clippers will of course be selecting Steph Curry, arguably one of the top 10 players of all time, which is what my last video was on. And of course we know that Steph just won his 4th title, and in this draft he went 7th overall, and this is one of the most infamous draft disasters in NBA history, is the Minnesota Timberwolves having both the number 5 and number 6 picks and going in and selecting Ricky Rubio, who turned into a decent NBA player who is a good facilitator and playmaker, but then Johnny Flynn, who is a complete bust, and then of course one of the greatest players of all time gets selected with the 7th overall pick. And of course there's not any real argument you could have to not have Steph at number 1 here. Some people might be able to make an argument for James Harden, but Steph is obviously the greatest shooter of all time, has 4 championships, his finals MVP, and is a 2-time MVP, of course, in the regular season, is one of the greatest overall scorers you've ever seen, a very impactful playmaker and underrated defender. So I don't really see any argument you can make to not have him going to the Clippers in the redraft. With the second pick in the redraft, the Grizzlies are selecting James Harden, who went 1 pick after this in the real draft to the Thunder with the 3rd pick, and Harden's obviously had a very interesting career. In his prime with the Houston Rockets, he was one of the most talented offensive players and dominant scorers we've ever seen, having a season averaging 36 points per game, and now he's developed into more of a facilitator and playmaker, and even a little bit more of a role player with the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets, but there's no doubt that he's going 2nd in this redraft. He's definitely the 2nd best overall player in this draft class with his incredible offensive abilities, and while he still hasn't been able to win a championship, there's no denying his talent over the course of his career. For his career, he's still averaging almost 25 points per game on about 61% true shooting and 7 assists per game. Offensively, he's one of the most talented and dominant players we've ever seen, and there's still no denying that. With the 3rd pick, the Thunder, who wouldn't be getting James Harden this time, would be selecting DeMar DeRozan, who went 9th overall to the Raptors. Another great job by the Raptors, and once another NBA draft with their great drafting and developing system, but DeMar's going 3rd here, and he could have gone 4th and maybe even 5th, but I'm picking him to go here because of his longevity and how he's still going strong in this day in 2022, having a career year last season with the Bulls. And for his career, he's always been a great scorer off the dribble, creating his own shot, that mid-range killer. He's good at getting to the rim, great at getting to the line and knocking down his free throws. He hasn't really been able to develop that 3-point shot and hasn't always been a great defender, but is developing his playmaking skills, and like I said, he still has a lot of strong years ahead of him. For his career, scoring-wise, he's averaging 21 points per game on 55% true shooting, and last year he put up almost 28 points per game on 59% true shooting, so he's still getting better to this day, and that's the main reason he's going 3rd here to the Thunder. With the 4th pick, the Kings would be selecting Blake Griffin, who in the real draft was the 1st overall pick and did live up to it. He's had a great career, but he's never been able to win a championship, and he is coming to the last years of his career right now with the Brooklyn Nets. With that being said, like I did say, his career has been great. He's always been really a dominant interior scorer. He's had some of the nastiest post-rising dunks that we've ever seen. He's always been an entertaining player to watch. He's a good one-on-one scorer. At times in his career, he's had a pretty good jump shot, and overall for his career, he's averaging about 20 points per game on almost 50% from the field, which is definitely very impressive. He's been a good post player, overall very good and strong finishing around the rim, but like I said, his longevity isn't great, and that's why he's not going 3rd ahead of DeMar DeRozan. With the 5th pick, the Timberwolves this time would be selecting Drew Holiday, who in the actual draft went 17th overall. one of the bigger steals in this one, and I've always seen Jrue Holiday as quite an underrated player. He plays his role really well, especially in the recent years with the Bucks that he's had. I think he's been really underrated defensively, what he's done, especially in that playoff run with them in 2021, clamping up some of the league's best guards throughout their playoff run, and that's what really he's been doing his entire career. He's always had a case to be a top 10 defender throughout the peak of his career. He's an amazing interior defender with great defensive instincts, great hands, and then offensively, he's always been a good playmaker. For his career, he's averaging about 6.5 assists per game, and then he's always been a pretty good interior scorer and shooter. He can be inconsistent when it comes to scoring and when he tries to do too much, but in general, he's a pretty good scorer over the course of his career as well, especially for a smaller guard. So I always think he's been underrated, and he's going at least 5th in this redraft. With the 6th pick, the Timberwolves again would be selecting Ty Lawson, who went 18th in the actual draft. Another steal here. So the Timberwolves, instead of getting Rubio and Flynn, would be getting Jrue Holiday and Ty Lawson, which is a pretty good backcourt duo. Jrue defensively, and then Ty Lawson, especially offensively in the peak of his career, he was a very fun player to watch. He was very shifty, electric overall, was able to create his own shot off the dribble with ease, and then unfortunately his NBA career did come to an end in 2017, and he hasn't really come back since. So because of longevity, he can't go higher, but I am still putting him 6th. He could go as low as 8th, but because of how good he was in his prime and how for the course of his career he's still averaging 13 points on decent efficiency and shooting, and also 6 assists per game, and how he was always a good playmaker throughout his career, I'm still putting him as high as 6 in this redraft. With the 7th pick in the redraft, the Warriors this time unfortunately wouldn't be getting Steph Curry, but we'll be getting a decent backup point guard in Jeff Teague, who is 19th overall in the actual draft. Another pretty big steal here. He actually made an all-star team, if you guys remember, in 2015 with the Hawks, when he averaged 16 points per game and 7 assists per game, and has always been kind of your typical strong backup point guard throughout his career. He's never really been that good of a shooter, but he has been good at running the pick and roll, a pretty good facilitator, and good at the main fundamentals that you need as a point guard. He's always been kind of that classic backup point guard. He's had a good kind of consistent career up to this point, and I definitely think he should go 7th overall. With the 8th pick, the Knicks would be selecting Tyreke Evans, who went 4th overall in the actual draft. So he's dropping a bit here, but Evans was another one of those players who had loads of talent, but couldn't really become consistent with any given team in the NBA and had a lot of struggles with injuries. And because of that, he didn't end up even reaching 600 games in the NBA yet since 2009, and he hasn't touched an NBA floor since 2019. So, but with that being said, though, he still was a very talented player, and if it wasn't for injuries, he would be going as high as 6th, and honestly, maybe even 5th, probably not ahead of Jrue Holiday in this redraft, but at least 6th, because he was still a very talented player. He was, again, shifty, kind of like Ty Lawson, even better in the peak of his career, and he did a lot of good things and provided a lot for the teams that he was with. Just got into trouble with some injuries, and overall almost averaged 16, 5, and 5 for his career. He was a great scorer, could create a shot off the dribble, but again, injuries got in the way. With the 9th pick in the redraft, my Raptors would be selecting Patrick Beverley, and we can't deny that Pat Bev, despite him being very annoying on the court sometimes, is definitely a winning player. He has a very good mentality, and he's a very good defensive player and a winner, whether we want to say that or not, and he was one of the bigger steals in this draft, going 42nd overall all the way in the 2nd round, and it would be interesting to see how he fit in with my Raptors, because they've always been a good defensive team with good defensive scheme, especially in the last 5 years. And I know this is the 2009 redraft, but if he was able to spend some time with them, that would be an interesting fit. And overall, Pat Bev's definitely a good defensive player. There's no denying that. The one-on-one, what he can do defensively in one-on-one matchups and on the perimeter is definitely very fun to watch. And he's never been much offensively, and of course that's why he's not as high as the top 7 or top 6, but he still is a decent playmaker, and his defense gets him in the top 10. And with the 10th pick, the Bucks would be selecting Ricky Rubio, and well, I've slandered him just a little bit in this redraft because of how the Timberwolves picked him over Steph Curry. He's definitely not classified as a bust. He's still making the top 10 here. Rubio's always been a pretty consistent backup point guard who provides some pretty good things offensively throughout his career, and he would be that backup point guard for the Bucks here. And while he's never been able to shoot the three well and has definitely been an inefficient scorer throughout most of his career, he has been able to provide some very good facilitating, playmaking, and passing ability, and he actually leads this draft class in assists per game over the course of his career, averaging 7.5 per game, which is actually really impressive. So he's still making the top 10 here. Now, when we look at the biggest bust from this draft class, we got one of the biggest busts of all time in Hasheem Thabeet, who went second overall in this draft to the Memphis Grizzlies when they could have had James Harden, who was the next pick, or Steph, who of course was the second pick. So obviously a complete disaster there. And the Grizzlies, if they pick either Steph or Harden in that situation, they could easily be sitting with a potential championship in their future in that case. But of course that didn't happen. They messed up this pick and picked the big bust. And then of course Johnny Flynn, who is the player picked right before Steph Curry by the Minnesota Timberwolves, 6th overall. And I don't even know what to say about this one, to be honest. That's just another complete disaster. And this happens in every draft, and that's why it's so fascinating to look back at it and see how tough it is to evaluate talent at the time because of how young players are just coming out of college. And looking back at this, it looks extremely stupid what the Timberwolves did, what the Grizzlies did, and how they passed up on two of the greatest players of all time in Harden and Curry. So there you have it. That's all I've got for you guys in today's video. I hope you enjoyed my redraft of the 2009 draft, and comment your thoughts down below on this draft class and how you would redraft it. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, and as I'll still be posting lots of NBA content throughout the off season, and I'll see you all next video.